Okay, thank you all for joining us. Today we have Konica Kosher, and she's here. She's going to talk about her estate planning experience. This is the first episode of our estate planning podcast series. I'm your host, Amber, and this is Alicia Ray, and we're both with Halo Law, and we specialize in estate planning. So we're very excited to have everyone here, and thanks again, Konica, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So we just want to kind of learn a bit about your experience. Just let us know. We understand you just signed your documents with us. You've got your estate plan in play. And just basically introduce yourself. Let us know what brought you to doing this.
Yeah, sounds good. So to start off, to introduce myself, my name is Konica. I work with the federal government as a policy advisor, but I was trained as a lawyer. And part of what brought me to Halo was just realizing that it's better to be prepared and start thinking about, your assets and what happens when, you're gone or if an emergency situation arises.
So let me ask Konica, first of all, how old are you?
I'm 32.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, when you came to us, how old were you when you got your documents in place?
Do you remember? Because I don't know. I don't care. 31. I was 31. Okay, so it was just last year. Yeah. But I also reached out when I, for example, bought my first house. That was in 2019. And then also when I got married, that was in 2021. Obviously, there was just a lot of different things you have to consider. For one, when you have a house, you have an asset you have to think about. When you're married, you have, another dependent. You're sort of combining your finances with someone else, and you want to make sure you're protecting each other.
So basically you had the house before you had the husband.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but how did things change when you got married? Did you find you were planning more together, or what was the considerations now that you were married?
Yeah, well, I feel that when you're married, essentially, you're building together. So you're reliant on each other in a different way. You're dependent on each other in a different way. And so your planning has to change because you need to sort of consider that and protect each other. You had joint assets. And so there's just a lot.
Did you both come to marriage with assets, or did you start building assets together after you got married?
Yeah, we always built together. I think that's what, makes it special. But we did come together and build together, really encourage each other in our careers. And so that's one aspect. But the other one too is, as you're building together, how are you making sure that you're protecting each other? Because you're sort of equal partners in this, and you have to make sure that things are accounted for in terms of your estate and your assets.
It's true. So you're 26 basically when you bought your house. You're about 28 when you got married.
Yep.
How old is your husband?
He is a year older than me, so he's 33. Yeah.
Okay, he's old.
Yeah, he's an old vet. So they're actually friends like to call him Grandpa.
They were both very young when they got their estate planning
Yeah.
done, 31 and 32.
Yeah.
Do you guys have children?
We don't have children, no.
Do many of your friends your age have their estate planning?
No, and that's I think it's more so I saw not necessarily my friends who were planning their estates, but I have a brother, for example, with a disability, and one common denominator from all his friends who have disabilities in their families is that their parents have had to do so much to make sure that things are set up for their kids, and there's unique rules around for example, inheriting assets and then having government support like ODSP and things. So I mostly saw that and saw how much sort of goes into it and how important it is. And my friends most of them have not started estate planning, but I think they should. Yeah.
So there wasn't a specific thing that happened that made you think, I need to have a will, but do you recommend other people start the process now, or should they wait later on in life, maybe in their 40s, 50s, or 60s? How was your experience?
I think as soon as you have assets, you should plan for them, right? Why wait? It's very much why not you can always update later on, but you can sort of have a base and know that everything's protected and accounted for. And then
actually what I tell our clients is it's cheaper to start now because your entry-level will is fairly reasonably priced. Yeah, about $1,000 usually you can expect. Once you start making updates, you just pay for the updates. So you
Yeah.
keep it nice and cheap if you start when it's entry level, rather than having to make a very complicated will when you start actually having crazy assets. So
Yeah. And I think it's just good to it's a learning curve. There's so many things that you don't you have to consider, and the earlier you start, it just gives you more time to acquire the knowledge and learn as you go. Yeah.
So, did you have any misconceptions before you came to us? Did you learn anything
Yeah.
that wasn't what you expected?
Yeah. So, I mean, one misconception I had was like I thought that, I can kind of just figure it out on my own. It'll be easy. I'll call the right people and I'll figure it out. But
especially because you're a lawyer, you
yeah,
already have a bit of the base knowledge.
for sure. But what I did come to realize is it's not that easy. Like what I found, for example, if I call a bank and I have a question, depending on who I get a different answer. It's not always that straightforward, and just digging for information, and sometimes it's inconsistent, right? So it's like just finding the information I need to fill out the forms I'm asked to fill out for different like things that you're doing. Um, it was not as easy as I thought. But what I really liked about the Halo process is um, you started off with an intake. And so then you just sort of you asked me all these questions to cover everything. So it was like, you don't know what you don't know, but I didn't have to worry about that because you were sort of already taking care of making sure you ask every little detail so that
One thing I remember and appreciate about drafting your documents with you is you had all your questions in email. It was so easy because then we could actually read, reflect, and it gives time to actually give you solid advice back in writing.
I'm glad you felt that way.
I mean,
Some people get annoyed of all my questions.
and I'm glad you brought up the intake form because you did have a fairly unique, even family structure. You have family members who don't live in Ontario; they don't even live in Canada.
Right.
So we had to make sure that you knew what the laws around that for if they could be your executor.
Lots of people always trying to put executors that are outside of the country.
Yeah.
And I remember you were asking, why can't I? And
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I didn't realize how complicated things were even at my age, but there are factors that you don't even realize till you start. So, for example, having a sibling who doesn't live in the country, having another sibling who has a disability, there's a lot of things that you don't even realize are something you have to account for until you actually start having these conversations about, planning your estate and POAs, things like that.
then you added your husband, and now you have to consider his side of the family.
Yeah. So as you go, there is a lot to consider, and it's best to, I think, just like start off with an expert who can point you in the right direction of what you should be considering.
100%. And not only did Konica do her will with us, she also did her powers of attorney. So she did her power of attorney for personal care and property.
Yes.
So she has that covered in case she's ever incapacitated.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about that disaster?
Yeah, who did you pick as your power of attorney for personal care?
I picked my husband.
Okay.
And yeah, I think like it's important to pick someone who kind of already knows what you would want to do anyways, right? And someone you can openly have conversations with when it comes to what you would want for your care. So yeah.
What I liked about the process with you and the household structure it seems that you've got going on is you and your husband meeting and you actually chatting about this and then coming and you're already on the same page, and when questions were coming up you could tell that you actually thought about it. So there's nothing wrong with like showing up and having questions on the spot, but it just really showed the intentional side of thinking about this because it's not as simple. You're right, it's just drafting the documents. The critical thinking piece that comes into it, and I think that's what exhausts most people.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to have some guidance through that. But we do like I'm definitely a planner, and I feel like again, there can be a lot of anxiety for people around like all this unknown. The way I deal with the anxiety is I ask the questions and get the information, and so that's why it was a great resource.
So with all the homework, how did you guys plan after the process? Because you named him as your power of attorney, you mentioned for property and personal care, right?
Yeah.
So how did you plan to actually set him up so that he's ready if he has to use these documents?
Yeah, so I think when you're naming a POA, really what you're doing is asking them to think about what you would have done in that situation, but you can't do it. So the conversations that you start having are just around like how you want to be taken care of, what you want your daily life to look like. And so I actually think it's something that everyone should be discussing with their family because it just feels, I think a lot of people don't expect something to happen where someone's incapacitated and then they say, well, I wish I asked when I could, right? We don't really like carve out that time to have these conversations. Sometimes it's a bit awkward. It's kind of like, why are you assuming that something might happen to me? But I see it as just like you're just ready, you're prepared, and it's actually empowering. So instead of being anxious about it,
Yeah.
you just talk about it. You know, everyone sort of on the same page. Other people know what you would have wanted, and then that's empowering. You don't have to be anxious about it.
We say like, wear your seatbelt, make sure the fire alarm works.
Yeah,
We have to do fire drills from elementary school.
yeah,
I'm not sure if work really does it anymore, but
yeah.
you're supposed to have a fire safety plan. So yeah, the same way, have a like incapacity plan.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Another really interesting thing about Conica's plan is it did include her extended family. So, for example, like she mentioned, she does have a brother, an older brother who has a disability. So, part of her estate planning and her parents' estate planning included looking after her brother.
Yeah.
Specifically, guardianship. If her parents were to be not around, then they actually asked Konica if she would take on that responsibility. So how did those conversations go with your family? What were the discussions like?
Yeah. So similar to what I said, like it's not always the most comfortable conversation to have, but I think it's really important. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Like it's
trust your mind at all not to accept that responsibility for your brother.
No, I think I've always, been happy to, or like been willing and wanting to do that. It's more just understanding how, right? So obviously there's so many moving pieces to taking care of my brother, for example. So my mom knows all of that. And so it wasn't ever that I wouldn't. It was more, I need to make sure that I understand all the pieces to it.
It was seamless.
Yeah.
And not fair to him, to be fair. Yeah, I know he loves you and he's excited that you're the cool sister right now. So if you ever have to...
He doesn't always think that I'm a sister, but again, appreciate it.
I just remember you sharing a story about going for ice cream and him being all ready.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of things that go into his care that you have to talk about. The littlest things, I feel like. And like he has small preferences and there's a lot that I know, but as someone who doesn't day to day always do those things, it was important to just start having those conversations. So even though maybe at first it was a bit uncomfortable, it's empowering for everyone in the family to know like we have a plan because again, nobody expects, like, you're talking about fire plans there. So like anybody you ask, something happens in their life that's, an emergency or like nobody really thinks that that's going to happen to them.
But the reality is we do expect to outlive our children, and that's our goal.
Exactly.
Nobody wants their child to pass away before
Yeah.
so it makes sense that
You said expect to outlive our children. I don't have children. Meaning you expect that our children will outlive.
well, I guess we expect that our children will outlive us. Yeah, it makes sense that you want to have a plan for them, and you're the person beneath them.
Yeah, in a way, it's like nobody expects certain exact things that happen to them, but we should all expect that life is unexpected.
Exactly.
And that's enough to be thinking about planning.
What was interesting with her, I think, is that her parents had this plan for her brother, and it included her, but now her plan had a plan for her brother as well, because you are the one who's expected to take him his full surrounding.
And that just shows that estate planning really is a family affair, that we want you to be speaking with your family.
Yeah.
You shouldn't just be naming people on the legal documents. And like you said, not communicating what the wishes and directions are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really good.
To be fair, we even actually at one point reviewed your mum's documents
Yeah.
to make sure that it does just seamlessly transition through the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing, so I also had my other brother who lives in the States, and we both together will be caring for my other brother, but just starting the process opens the conversation.
So, your parents had your plan and you discussed this plan with your parents, but your husband, he is part of your family now, and your family has welcomed him, accepted him, and from a cultural perspective, it's expected that you're going to help your brother.
Mm-hmm.
But how did you have this conversation with your husband and make sure that he was on board, understanding and also supportive of what the goal for your brother is?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's generally awesome. He's always supported me in anything in life that I care about, and that obviously includes my family. But then when you get married, it's more than that. It's like you have that feeling, you know, your partner will support you through these things, but then you have to actually talk about more detailed pieces afterwards. So yeah, we just started having more of those specific conversations about, you know, like in the future, it's like the what ifs, right? Like, you know, what if this, if he needs this kind of support or this kind of care, and my parents, like God forbid something happened, they're not around for it. Like we started having those more specific conversations just so we can have a plan.
And that's so smart of you. And you're doing the hard conversations now in a proactive way instead of when something happens and then you're assembling your emergency planning. So good for you.
Yeah.
These conversations can be tough, but you conquered them.
Yeah. And I think there is something to say, like, you don't always know, right? It's like, I don't think I have 100% time and place that's in stone.
Yeah.
But again, it's just about starting to have those conversations. So you're starting to think about it. You have options. And then if something does happen, it's not a completely brand new thing. Like you've sort of started thinking through different ways you can approach different situations.
And I think what's nice is that the conversation didn't start with Konica when she came to us, and it didn't end when she ended with us.
Yeah.
It's definitely ongoing, and it's things that we just, you know, we're text away. That's kind of what we always try to extend to the Halo family is if anything comes up in your head, just text. Reply whenever we can.
Right. And it's just like the little things that you continue to point out, you know, for example, like I think we talked about recently that, and even when we were doing our, like we we're going through the process of planning, so you would just think, right, like you get married, and so, you know, as a lawyer, I'm aware, like in family law, you have a matrimonial home, and so you're both entitled to it. But then there's these extra details that like you brought up to me about, for example, like, there's tax implications if both of you aren't on title. Well, from my perspective, I didn't realize that very specific thing, right?
So I mentioned you brought the property into the marriage, so he wasn't untitled previously.
Yeah. But like, yeah, it's important to like start talking about those things, and then you don't realize those little details. Even as someone in law, I was kind of just like, we understand, right? Like, your matrimonial home is equally, you know, both of your partners, like you both.
And that's another thing too. Even when you bought your home, you were alone buying it on your own. They probably weren't advising you that as soon as you get married, add your spouse onto title. They weren't thinking so.
But they also weren't thinking as soon as you find someone that you're interested in, there's different considerations if they move in before.
Yeah.
Because there's different agreements that need to be made.
Yeah.
People have claims to these properties even.
And that was such a good example of exactly when you need to revisit your estate plan. There's a major event in your life, you got married, and that's where you have to now plan together.
Yeah. And it's like protecting that, right? So the main thing for me was that is equally our home. That's our matrimonial home. We equally input into that, right? So now it's important that if something happens to me, we're not in a situation where like one partner can't access, or, you know, or they have to suddenly like, it doesn't just automatically transfer to them. They have to pay all these taxes now. And so
sometimes people don't realize they can't necessarily afford to stay.
Yeah.
If they don't have other things.
Exactly. So it's really just protecting each other's interests in that property as well. I think that's.
Okay, so we also wanted to talk to you about your experience with the state administration, and we're sorry for your loss this year.
Yeah.
We wanted to hear a little bit about how that looked, what the probate process was.
Yeah.
And as somebody who, at your young age, had to assist with that.
Yeah. So there is just so many moving pieces, and I think people don't think about it because until you actually have to administer in the state, you know, there's so many little details that you don't have to think about. But it's a lot. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of back and forth with different groups. Again, like I mentioned before, it's a lot of information that doesn't match up. It's a lot of calling a bank who asks for a certain document from a funeral home that gives you something that's wrong, and then going back, or like just them, the bank not understanding, or being just sort of discrepant, like with the pieces of information they're asking for, if that makes sense. So I just found that it wasn't clear cut is what I'm trying to say in summary.
So what you did with your will, like you wrote your will, you have an idea of how it's supposed to actually work.
Yeah.
Do you find that was transferable in the probate process at all, or yeah, just feel completely brand new and fresh.
I think they're two very different. Like when you're sitting down and thinking about planning your estate, that's a very different thing than you have an estate in front of you, and now you have to make sure that you administer it in a way that's um, done properly. So like you are liable if you don't administer that estate properly.
What do you think you can do for your people to make it seamless now that you've gone through it on the other end? You've written your will and you've experienced administering the estate. So how can you make it easy for your people?
Like how to make it easier on someone else who becomes an estate administrator.
Yeah, so for your named estate trustee, what can we do now to help prep them more?
Yeah, so I guess to be honest, I think part of it is just you need to have support during the process. So it's connecting them to the right people, making sure that they have contacts when it's time to administer the estate, because there's a lot of unique questions that come up, and I don't think you can be prepared for every little thing because it's very dependent on the context.
I think when you came to us, you were one of the very few people who come right away.
Yeah.
A lot of people come like within the year.
Yeah.
Some clients come years later, and there's all these different processes that we have to consider.
Yeah.
So what made you act so quickly to start this process?
Well, I felt like there was a bit of an urgency, and I feel like for some, like maybe some people come in the year because they don't need access to the assets, but where someone immediately needs access to the assets of the person who's passed, and there's a lot of pending things, like pending, I don't know, for example, like a disability claim, right? For example, right? Like if there's things that are continuously changing, if someone's the only one on an account and a mortgage gets paid out of that, like there's so many examples where you have to do it immediately.
Because one thing that I like about you as well, among all the things I keep telling you I like about you, you have all the plans in place. So you have insurances yourself and little things that make the process easier.
Yeah.
Because I guess the first 30 days, how does that look after? Because
there's so much.
Yeah.
Returning moving pieces, your life insurance, you got to make sure, because after someone passes, it's like everything that they were doing, you kind of have to think about it and take over, whether they're in the middle of a process, whether they were paying something from their account, whether there's a loan they're paying off, like just throwing out examples of all the different things that immediately stop.
And in your case, was this information written in a book or something for you that you could just pick up and kind of continue on?
No, I think just like we had to sort of, and that goes to the question of how can people make things easier. I think they can talk about what they have so that if something happens to them, people around them know. But no, there was nothing really written. It was more just like pieces that different family members would know and just collecting the information. But that speaks to your process, right? Like when you administer an estate, you ask those questions in advance. So you could do that, right? You could sit down with someone and make a whole list of their assets, their liabilities, the things they need to consider. That way, when it comes time to do it, you're not scrambling, right? Like I'm thinking my mom, I don't know, like she has one safety deposit box that's like sitting in so far away from the home. If she doesn't tell me that or write it down somewhere, how would I know? I know her local bank is somewhere. So
the thing is, if she's got the will in there, they're not going to let you access that.
Yeah. So there's like so many things that you can just talk about in advance. And what I find is it can be really overwhelming. Like, I don't know, my mom will just in passing be like, by the way, I have a safety deposit box. This is the address. These are their hours. And I'm like, I'm not going to remember that on my needed. Literally, it's just that detail, right?
9 to 5 only.
Yeah. They're open on Saturdays. I'm like, hey, thanks, Mom. But like.
And are you writing this down yourself when you're...
No, and I just want you to remember. She's just like WhatsApping it to me as if I'm going to like find that and when I need it, right? So these are just examples. It's good. She's providing me with that information, but I think the point is like finding a way to be organized and collecting all of that so you have the information when you need it. And there's
just in one page.
Yeah.
And that's what we do with people is we prep people, we put it all on one page, but we also put our faith in them that they're gonna do it.
Yes.
And there's a lot of homework after, a lot of pre-work and a lot of homework. And it's not always ideal because we think we've written our plan and the family's protected, but there could be a hidden asset somewhere, and unless somebody knows about it, that can just stay hidden for a while.
Yeah, but once you start, you have a place to keep updating. It's like what we keep going back to. You just start somewhere and then you acquire another big asset. You can just add it to that list rather than, just starting from scratch or that person not knowing. It's like,
Exactly.
you have it, it's up to date as of this date. Now, in 2 more years, you can revisit it. Or if there's a big significant life change, like you have a kid or you get married or you purchased a new asset, or you have a new debt, like you can sort of just add to that list continuously. Yeah.
100%. And in your experience with the estate administration, how many hours did that look like per day that you're spending on?
Oh my gosh. Way too many. Because so much of it was like just to get a question answered.
Yeah.
You're sitting on hold forever. Like, for example, I want to call like the court office. That, for example, depending on where you're calling. If you're calling Brampton Court, it takes a while.
Not even answer you.
I mean, sometimes they just put you on hold and then it's like, like it's been too long and then it hangs up.
We're doing an estate right now, and the other day you sat on hold for 4 hours in Scotiabank.
Yeah, 4 hours and 2 different phone calls, at least, but 4 hours.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like right now, that's our job, but it's your responsibility when you're doing it. Yeah, you're also working full time.
Yeah,
Typically.
and that's, I think, like a reason you need to think about that. Like, it's possible that you'll be in a place in your life where you need to administer an estate, but then if you think about like what you'll be, well, do you have the time to even do that, right? So it's like, maybe you won't, right? That's another example of really important arguments.
I draft their documents, and then when it comes time to administer it, the families don't quite understand that it costs money to administer a estate.
Yeah,
And it takes time, and that's where
absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like our family, we had so many family members who together bonded to sort of come up as a team and do different pieces. But like, I can only imagine if you're working full time, you have kids, or you're just a small family, it's just you, and it falls on you to do all of the administrative work. It's a lot.
And not only that, some families aren't as harmonious, and that can cause a world of issues. So.
Right, exactly.
one thing I like about your family as well is you've got the legal background. Your husband's a realtor, so a lot of the things that are needed for that process were just done quickly because you guys
different pieces. Yeah, my brother-in-law is like in insurance, so when you talk about like life insurance, so everyone kind of brought their expertise. But that's what I mean. It was like a team of people with their own subset of knowledge, but where not everyone gets that, right? So it's like,
and that's also why we say name backup. So every person you appoint to be your executor, make sure you have a backup for them and a backup for their backup.
Yeah.
Some people try to appoint maybe 5, but then that also is equally as chaotic because now you got to get 5 people all together and to sign, and how many different people are calling and held up at different processes.
Yeah. And they're trying to agree to things, right? It's like 5 different people, and then I find sometimes it's like who's doing what. It gets lost because
Exactly.
a lot of things are overlapping. So yeah, it's good to, I think, like have a plan in place, but then also be aware that if you ever are in a position where you are an estate administrator, you can seek out the support. It's there. Like there's people who specialize in or even do that, right? Like you guys just take over the estate administration, and that's
as hard as there's that waiting period right after somebody passes away up until the certificate of appointment is issued.
Yeah,
that period is quite brutal for a lot of people because nobody's technically legally allowed to do anything.
Yeah, and that goes back to your question of like, why'd you just start right away? It's like because as you said, there's a whole process to even be able to touch the assets, and if you need them, or like it's not even if you need them, it's just like you gotta eventually figure it out so you can access them. It's like it's such a long process. Start now.
Yeah. No, you guys definitely have always been on it, which is so great because like even though I guess 30 feels old for everyone over 30. I haven't quite hit 30 myself yet, so yeah, we're getting there really.
Sorry, no.
But it's a lot. Like even though we get older, we feel like we're taking on more responsibilities, but it's the reminder that we still don't know, and we just know that we need to ask and get help from all these different people.
Yeah. And it's not to like cause anxiety. I feel like that's one thing I've learned. It doesn't have to be an anxiety thing. You just have to know what the resources are when it happens. And if you can do that in advance and understand what resources are out there, it just makes it less of a stressful situation when you need to apply that now.
But I find like the one thing that's interesting about this process is you do really have to trust people. And you have to trust people you don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things are way high level you don't quite understand.
Yeah.
So you do have to just trust the process and like let the process play out and
Yeah.
yeah, had people guide. I guess you guided the family, which was great.
Yeah.
So if you're ready to plan your own estate, just give us a call. You can text. Our office is located just downtown at 50 Carroll Street. Most of the estate planning process is done virtually, and it just starts with a questionnaire. Then you'll meet with Alicia Ray, and you guys will work together, and she'll guide you through the process. It's nice and simple, guys.